I just finished The Last Final Girl. Do you want me to hold this up like this tiny picture? Hi, and welcome to my channel. We're talking about Stephen Graham Jones today. If you don't know, I'm reading through his whole catalog. He's one of my author catalog challenge spins. That's like a long way of saying that I took people's suggestions for authors and I put them in a wheel and I spun 2 times and I got Stephen Graham Jones and Tamara Pierce. So this is the video where I talk about the Stephen Graham Jones books that I have read since my last Stephen Graham Jones video. And his name is too hard to say over and over like that. So I'm just going to talk about the book I finished. And I'm going to be joined by Django in his Christmas sweater because he thinks that it's cold outside. This is the next book by Stephen Graham Jones, and it's not I'm not reading his books in any kind of chronological order. I am trying to read the books in chronological order, but I most of the time really need to read audiobooks just because it's really hard for me to have a lot of sit down time to read books, and I have his whole catalog to get through, so I'm working on it. There are some of his books, like I think I'm going to order a short story compilation. I already read one, The Ones That Got Away. And so I think I'm going to order another one, and then I'm just going to like slowly read those 1 or 2 a day. And then when I finish that book, I'll talk about the whole thing. However, I finished a book, The Last Final Girls, and that's why we're here. Let's talk about the non-spoilery parts first. This book was great as well as the rest of, just like the rest of his that I've read. The uniqueness of the things that he does in his writing just continues to amaze me. Like, I just feel like he takes concepts and just tweaks it a tiny bit. And so from the title, Last Final Girl, this is clearly about the last final girl. And it follows a movie. Like, it is telling us what is happening and what we're seeing as if we're sitting in a movie theater or at our house on the couch watching the movie. So it begins by saying the camera draws out and this is what we see. And then in the book, it's like, and now we've switched to this point of view and we see it from this point of view. And it was really good. I really loved how unique it was and how you still don't know who the killer is. It would say through the killer's point of view. And the killer is wearing a Michael Jackson mask, and so they keep calling it Billie Jean, the Billie Jean killer, which I think is weird. But anyway, that's what they call it through the whole book. And so it'll say, we're looking through Billie Jean's eye holes, and this is what we see, and that kind of stuff. Because when you're watching a horror movie, the point of views change, and you get that point of view when what we think is the killer is like standing in the woods and you can see through the trees and see the kids out there. So it's really funny, but I loved every bit of all of that, the creativity of it and everything. So let's talk about what I didn't love about this one. And mostly it was because all of the girls seemed kind of interchangeable to me, which may be what he was going for, because this was supposed to be just one of those high school slasher movies. Like, we were watching a high school slasher movie. And so there were even like the discussions. There was a girl in there who was obsessed with serial killers and the final girl things. And there was a homecoming party where all these kids got killed. There was a homecoming event where the bad guy was trying to kill everybody, like showing up to kill everybody. And so it just was exactly what you think a high school slasher movie would be. And he was just telling it to us in book form. And I loved it, except for all the characters. Like I said, the girls were so hard to tell apart who was who. And really a couple of the guys as well, if they didn't give indicators like there was the boyfriend and there was the little brother and there was the sheriff and like that kind of thing, because otherwise I just kept getting confused about who was doing what at what point. And there's so many point of view changes because literally he's describing every camera change in a movie. And so they happen all the time. Like, I just don't think about them happening because that's the way we expect movies to go. But reading about it in book form did get to be a little bit confusing to me. And the girls, like I said, were kind of interchangeable, but it did have a really cool twist at the end, just like, I don't know why I called it really cool. It is one of those slasher twists, and that's what happened. And I really enjoyed it. So, I'm not sure what my next Stephen Graham Jones book is going to be. I will pop a picture up right here, and I'm going to start on it probably in a week or so, but I'll be back here with updates on that book. I figured out part of my problem with this, my face getting so washed out, is because my desk is white, and so the sun comes in and like flashes up from underneath and makes everything super bright. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I kind of covered it up with some stuff, and hopefully that'll help for right now. But I finished another book. I finished Growing Up Dead in Texas, and I've already put the little picture in my thing, so I can't hold it up here for you to see. But this one started out so weird. It was, I mean, does that sound like a normal Stephen Graham Jones comment? This book started out weirdly. What happened was, it starts out by saying, like, I've never written nonfiction, but I'm giving it a try. And I was like, is this going to be a nonfiction book about, like, literally Stephen Graham Jones writing a nonfiction book? And then it was immediately like, oh no, this is a fiction book. And the guy who's writing the book is writing a nonfiction book. So our narrator is a writer, and our main character is a writer, and he writes fiction, but for this, he's writing a nonfiction book about what happened in his small town in Texas. So that was a lot of confusion at the very beginning, because I think this is based on something that actually happened in Stephen Graham Jones's life when he was growing up in a small town in Texas. Like, it's some kind of meta-ness that is flowing all through this book. So anyway, I'm not going to give it away. I will just say that something happens in this small Texas town, and we are circling. It feels like the event, right, is right in the center. I'm going to hold my hand like this so you can see. It feels like the event is here that happened. And we start out way out here, and we go circling around it and like spiraling in. And eventually we get to the middle. And by eventually, I mean in the very end. Like, I did not understand this book, I think, is part of the problem. Like, I feel like other people may figure out what's going on, or figure out what the actual thing is and then who did it a lot faster than I did. But I needed it all laid out for me at the very end, like where he says, this is what happened, and this is who did it, and this is why this person lied, and this is why this person, like, just the whole thing. I needed it just laid out for me. And so it was still a good, enjoyable read, just because you're learning about people and you're reading about characters, and you're especially getting into the psyche of the main character, the writer who's telling the story. And so I liked that part. And then there was all this like small town stuff that if you're from a small town, you totally know that, like, the police officers who are related to some people in the town might not necessarily do certain things for them, or might do extra things for them for reasons. So anyway, that part of it made me think about my small town that I grew up in. But anyway, it was, I'm going to say that it was okay for me. I think that other people might enjoy it better if you're better at figuring out things or something. I don't know. I just couldn't get this one. Like, it never really clicked with me. And so I gave it like my lowest rating I've ever given a Stephen Graham Jones book, which is still a 3.5. But normally they're like 4.5 to 5 stars. So I'm kind of sad about this one, but that just means that I get to go on to the next one. And so I'm ready for that one too. Normally I come on here every time I finish a book and I discuss what I have read, but yesterday I finished 2 of his books, and it was too dark last night to film anything when I finished the first one, and I was like, well, I'll just do it in the morning. And then I finished the second one, and so now I have 2 to talk about, which doesn't normally happen. But they were both short story compilations, and so I had been reading them slowly as I was going along. And anyway, That's why I have two for you today. So let's talk about the shortest one first. This one is called 3 Miles Past, and it has 3 stories in it. And the best news is that just like a lot of his books, he has the author's note at the end that explains like what he was thinking about as he wrote it and where the idea came from, and it's very cool. I always love to hear where authors get their ideas from or what inspired them for a certain character or something like that. And I just thought that this was great. I think it is so funny that he thinks that one of his like huge fears in his life is a person with a dog's head. And I mean, out of all the fears that somebody would have, I just think that is the strangest. Well, not the strangest, but that's just a really strange one to have. Anyway. The first story in this one was the best, in my opinion. The second story seemed to come out of nowhere. Like, it was so different from anything else that I had written and anything I've written. It was so different than anything that I've read from him so far. And I don't know, I was just like, what is happening? What is this story? And then the third one was so confusing, and it felt like a fever dream, stream of consciousness stuff, and I didn't even really know what was going on and what was happening. I thought we were telling a pretty linear story at the beginning, and then all of a sudden it kind of went places that I didn't know where we were going and what was real and what was in his imagination. And I mean, I guess that was the point, is that our main character was kind of spiraling into I don't know, some kind of lower level of, like, he was just descending into madness, and I guess we were going along with him. But the first story, like I said, was my favorite. It involved a serial killer. That's all I can say. The second story, these 2 boys created an app, and what this app is supposed to do is you can turn the app on and take a picture behind you and then look at it to see if there's like something behind you. But then they have a bunch of stock photos that they put in there so that when you pull it up, it shows anything behind you, but it's in where you are. So it like puts that thing in your house or in your street, wherever you normally are. It's the picture that you're taking. Okay. I don't even know how to describe this app. I've spent forever thinking about how I'm going to talk about this, but you take a picture behind you, and it is the regular picture behind you that you see on the app. However, their thing has overlaid something on there so that it looks like something's behind you. So it's like fog, or it's a girl climbing on the wall, like just creepy things like that. And it's random what you get whenever you take a picture. So anyway, they create this app. They don't know that it's going to have consequences down the road, and it does. And the story number 3 is about a serial killer, and I can't really say more than that. So I know that stories 1 and 3 sound very similar because they're both about serial killers, but I promise you they're very different and both equally creepy. Okay, the next book that I read, or compilation, was After the People Lights Have Gone Off. The name After the People Lights Have Gone Off is what he says when he's in the head of like a raccoon or a squirrel. I can't remember. It's some kind of animal in the front yard. And the animal is like, we don't approach the house until after the people lights have gone off. And I was like, oh, that's such a cool way of putting that. So anyway, that is one of the stories in there. And that was a really good story, actually. There were a lot of stories. I think there are 16 stories in this one. And there were quite a few that I really enjoyed and that I'm going to think about for a long time afterwards. But I do think After the People Lights Have Gone Off might be my favorite one from this one. They're all just that level of creepy where you're like, ew, really? Like, you think that things are going okay, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's not exactly right, or that is not happening the way it should be, or oh, that's creepier than I thought it would be. And so there's a couple of them in there that are like, that I really like. I would recommend both of these compilations, especially if you're just looking to get into his writing and to see. He has so many short stories and so many novellas that you don't have to jump into a 250-page book. You could easily start with one of these, and there's just so many. But there's no wrong place to start. I don't think you're going to get a wide variety of his writing, the more stream of consciousness fever dream kind, and the more like linear story that just has the element of wrongness as you're reading it. And so it doesn't really matter where you start. I have not found anything yet that I've just been like, oh, I really didn't like that. There have been a few that I've been like, I didn't get that, but none that I was just like, I didn't like it at all. And it had like no redeeming qualities. So you can't go wrong wherever you want to start. Okay, I am not going to end it here. I'm going to read something else first before I end this video. I just don't know what's next because I haven't looked at my sheet. So we'll both be surprised when I come back here and talk about my next Stephen Graham Jones. Well, I just finished my last thing from Stephen Graham Jones that's going to go in this video, and it was Attack of the 50-Foot Indian. This was listed as having 50 pages, but it also had like a preview of the Only Good Indians at the end of it. So it was actually only about 35 pages. It was a really quick read, and it was just a silly, goofy story that also still had some touching moments in it. I know that's weird, but it's about a 50-foot tall Indian that just randomly comes up to the United States one day and how everybody reacts to that. And I loved, again, we got to see at the end, like he does in a lot of his books, where he wrote where he was when he came up with this idea. And I mean, he wrote it in like no time while he was standing at a laundromat. And I just think that that's really funny. I liked it. It was really cute. And that's going to do it for this one. I am certainly not done with his books. I'm starting to get more of an idea of how many he has available and what all I'm going to keep going with. So I haven't decided exactly what's next on his list, but I will let you know for sure at the beginning of the next Stephen Graham Jones video. Now, this video will not be coming for 2 months. So on the 1st of January, we have this one. And then on the 1st of February is going to be Tamara Pierce. And then the 1st of March will be the next Stephen Graham Jones. So however much I can read between January 1st and March 1st is what you will see in the next video about him. So leave me an emoji from any of the books or stories that I've talked about so far. Any of those things, that's something that reminded you of, from The Last Final Girl all the way through to Attack of the 50-Foot Indian. So you can do helicopters for one. You can do like machetes or blood, gross, for any of them usually. You can even do dogs if you want to for 3 miles past. I know I didn't tell you that, but that's got something to do with it. Okay, that is all for now, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.